Hey guys, it's LSuperSonicQ here with some scrapped and prototype elements from Video Game Classic Models 11. So first we're going to start with the Melee set, which, with a set that had so many characters in it, of course I was going to mess up at least a few times, and I did. So first I want to show Mewtwo, who's seen better days. He's just fallen apart all over the place, but at one point he was complete. He had his arm and his tail and a stand and legs and everything, but now I wish these guys didn't fall apart so easily, but they're kind of just in the prototype bag, so anyway, this Mewtwo is what started the set, and initially, of course, I didn't have any characters when I started the set, so I had to just kind of go in blind and sculpt, a character and have that be the starting size for all the characters. However, after Mewtwo, I sculpted Dr. Mario and Yoshi, who were both in proportion. Now the problem is I thought Mewtwo was more along the lines of like a human size, however, he's more along the lines of Yoshi's size, so Mewtwo was too small compared to Dr. Mario and Yoshi to have been kept in the set as this model. So I had to scrap him and sculpt another one for the actual set. Now, what happened is, before I scrapped Mewtwo, I tried to sculpt around Mewtwo being small and Mario, or Dr. Mario, and Yoshi being larger. So what happened is I made 4 models. Well, I started to make 4 models that ended up all being scrapped. First was Ganondorf, who just proved to be too big. He was just too big overall. I would have had to shrink the entire model, so this is about as far as I got on him before I scrapped him. Then I thought, okay, well, let's try Falco. And this Falco, actually, he had more to him, but I tried to revive him so I didn't have to sculpt the second Falco, but he was just too large. So I realized I couldn't do anything with him, but it had been too late because I had already taken off the eyes and changed the head, but that was the prototype Falco. Then I'm like, well, you wanna know what? Let's just sculpt the new Mewtwo, and maybe it'll be the same size as Dr. Mario and Yoshi. And it turned out pretty strange, and the white I used turned a really terrible color. So he was too large anyway, and I was not thrilled with the sculpt. And then I'm like, well, okay, I'm gonna try Samus, get her really small and, see what I can do with it, and it just turned out too big again. I mean, this was Mewtwo's body, and this would have been Samus. I mean, it was just so bad to start, because just that Mewtwo threw me off so much that it took a lot to kind of get the set back into motion. So that was kind of those models in themselves. Then, a little later on, I almost threw the scale to this out the window. So here's a Marth that I made, which was after I had scrapped Mewtwo and all the other ones I just showed, and it was after I had decided that Dr. Mario and Yoshi were going to be the scale standard to the set. So this Marth did have, an arm and stuff. It kind of, like I said, broke off in the bag. But essentially, like I said, I was going to throw scale out the window, and this Marth would have been really large compared to Yoshi and Dr. Mario. So I'm glad that I kind of smartened up and no, I have to do the scale, because it would just look too weird. I mean, Marth was probably the largest that I had going. Mewtwo was the smallest. Could you imagine a set like this? It would just be so awkward and strange. Fun fact, though, is Marth's sword and Marth's stand and his cape, too, were all taken from this scrap model, and I worked it into the actual Marth that was in the Melee set. So that's kind of cool that I recycled some of his parts. And then, to go along with the Marth, was this Roy that I sculpted on the same day. And I really like this Roy sculpt. I just wish I didn't have to really scrap it. So maybe I'll make something out of it someday. But that's the Roy that would have gone with the Marth in the larger Marth scale. And then toward the later part of the set, I did this Fox that was just simply too large. I really liked the face, but I sculpted it too large. And when compared with other models, it was just kind of like Ganondorf. He was just too bulky. I would have had to shrink him all around to really get him right. So that's a scrapped Fox. And then I started to do this Mario head, but it was just, again, too big compared to Dr. Mario and the other characters that should be the same size as Mario. And then I did this Pikachu, which is a real shame because he was all done being sculpted, and then I'm like, oh, he's a little too big. And Pikachu was one of those, and his tail kind of broke off, but his tail wasn't at one point. Pikachu was one of those characters that's he's bigger than Mario and stuff, but he's not quite as big as Yoshi, and it was really hard to scale him. So this is pretty much a final Pikachu, except he's just too large, so I couldn't include him into the set. So that was pretty much all of the scrapped Melee models. Next, I want to move on to a concept that didn't see fruition in this installment, but maybe in the future it will. So there's this game called Shin Megami Tensei, and it's a role-playing game by Atlas, and there's this one game in particular, Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne, and there's this character in it, the main character protagonist, that I really wanted to do a master sculpt of. He goes by the Demi-Fiend, I guess. So what I did before I started a master sculpt is I sculpted this out of just like, pre-colored Sculpey clay or whatever. And I did this because I wanted to not only get kind of a first sculpt down and see if I could paint on his, I guess, tattoo details or, whatever they are, with like a marker or something, so that, I could get a little more accurate and a little more defined lines than just if I was to paint it on. Also kind of wanted to just think, a standard sculpture of the Demi-Fiend, not investing a whole lot of time into it to start. Unfortunately, however, I wasn't too crazy with the sculpt after I had, seen it this far, and the paint, well, not paint, but the marker didn't work as well as I wanted it to, so it's a little dull. So I just kind of scrapped him because I wasn't too crazy about it after I made it, so someday he will get a super sculpt. And then the final bit I have to show for this video is part of the Nintendo Generation set. So in the video I showed this Mario on a metal cap block like this. However, there was another model like this, and it was a Starman on a wing cap block. So together these guys would have gone on this flat piece of clay, and it would have been a little Mario 64 diorama like this. But as you know, I like the Mario so much I made him be the start of the Generation set. I scrapped the metal cap block, and I just never found anything useful to do with these guys after I had made that decision, so they were scrapped. And then is this, which is the stand that I was originally going to use for the Nintendo Generation set. I was going to have all the N64 characters here and all the GameCube characters here, all kind of facing the same way. This flop with the GameCube games would have, been up top here. However, if you couldn't tell, the stand is really, shaky. It did not hold the characters very well, especially the GameCube ones, who had trouble standing, on their own. So I thought that instead of scrapping the stand, maybe I could add better support, and I took this top area of the GameCube thing and folded it down this way. However, I thought that was strange how like some models would be facing this way and some would be facing this way, so I just kind of ended up scrapping the stand. However, you'll notice that there's a Luigi's Mansion box here, which means there was an 8th model planned to the set. So this is the Luigi that would have gone to the set and represented Luigi's Mansion. Now I kind of set myself up for failure because I had my Master Sculpt Luigi going on, and I knew this guy was not going to be as good as the Master Sculpt. Not only that, but he was kind of on the larger side, and I painted him the wrong colors. The green is a lot darker than it should be, the blue is a lot lighter than it should be, so I would have had to go back, over these colors, and that would have been a mess to do, and I got a bunch of paint on his face accidentally, so going over that with like a lighter color like peach would have been really hard. So essentially, I just didn't want to put the time into, having to fix this Luigi, or kind of sculpt any other characters at this point, because I then decided that 7 characters is what was going to be, in the Generation set. I didn't want to push the set beyond where it needed to be pushed. So I thought 7 was, a nice end to the set. Why bother making an 8th if I, didn't really care about making an 8th? So that essentially is all the prototype and scrap material from Video Game Clay Figur Models 11. So thank you for watching. Hope you guys found this interesting. I'm LSuperSonicQ. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, Finn.